Salutations, everyone. So, throughout the Pokemon franchise, there have been some controversial Pokemon. Whether from its appearance or its description, they happen to be the center of debate on the internet. And what better controversial Pokemon than the alleged creeper Hypno? With justification, this Pokemon happens to be one of the creepiest Pokemon to date due to an odd Pokedex entry from Pokemon Fire Red. And honestly, the same could be said about its pre-evolution, Drowsy, as it has a peculiar entry. And for those who might not know what I'm talking about, let me read them. As for Drowsy, it states, "It remembers every dream it eats. It rarely eats the dreams of adults because children's are tastier." And as for Hypno, it states, "It carries a pendulum-like device. There was once an incident in which it took away a child it hypnotized." As you can see, this is bloody weird. Why would this Pokemon specifically target children? Is the Hypno line truly evil? Well, the only way we can find out is to delve into its direct origin. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in. So first off, we need to know more about the Hypno line. And luckily for us, the other Pokedex entries are kind enough to reveal its true origin. Check out Drowsy's Pokedex entry from Pokemon Fire Red. It states, "A descendant of the legendary animal Baku, which is said to eat dreams. It is skilled at hypnotism." This can also be verified by Pokemon Stadium's entry and an early entry from the Pokemon anime. But what is a Baku? Well, that's what I'll be going over in this video. To truly understand the ulterior motives of Drowsy and Hypno, we'll need to know its distant ancestors' motives as well. So, in Japan, the Baku is a mythical creature which is said to have the body of a bear, the nose of an elephant, the feet of a tiger, the tail of an ox, and a few other mismatched features. So it's basically a chimera. But description aside, the interesting thing about these creatures is that they are said to consume bad dreams from people. In the Japanese legends, they are seen as a talismanic figure which are revered for their power to absorb horrible nightmares so that they will never be seen again. However, there's a catch to this magnificent power, as in some cases, if the Baku is too hungry, it can not only eat one's nightmares, but also their dreams of aspiration, their dreams of the future, and of their hope. There is a lot more to mention about the Baku and how important it is in Japanese history and culture, but let's take a look at this sacred creature's beginnings. It all started in ancient Chinese legends with the predecessor of the Japanese Baku, called Mo, which were typically hunted for pelts. Now, one thing I need to mention is that Mo and Baku share the same Chinese character. But with that aside, the pelt which was obtained from the Mo was made into a blanket, and this blanket was used as a talisman against illness and evil spirits. However, due to the rarity of the Baku pelts, or the Mo pelts, the ancient Chinese made an exception to use a talisman which was an image of the Mo over one's bed. It was said that this too would equally protect you against malice spirits. Of course, like most legends and stories from China, they would eventually be transmitted to Japan, but there was a slight variation to the Mo or Baku that made it different from its Chinese counterpart, which was the Baku being associated with dream eating. One possible reason why the Baku became associated with eating dreams is from a Chinese book from the Tang Dynasty called The 6 Stories of the Tang Dynasty. In one of the stories, a creature named Bakuki was said to consume the dreams of people, so it's very plausible the Japanese merged the two creatures into one single legend. So after the introduction of the Baku to Japan, it became linked as a talisman, usually placed under one's pillow. This talisman either protected one from malice spirits, or prevented and consumed the nightmares which children or individuals might have experienced. The Baku raised in popularity in the Edo period from the 17th and 19th centuries amongst the population, so much so that they're commonly seen in architectural decorations known as kibana at various prominent shrines and temples. One example would be the renowned Nikko Toshogu Shrine dedicated to Tokugawa Ieyasu. Along with this, images of the Baku, or the Chinese character for it, were often displayed in auspicious images of the 7 lucky gods of Japan on the takarabune, or treasure boat. The kanji for the Baku is sometimes printed on the sail of this treasure boat, and it is said that these auspicious images help protect one from the bad nightmares if they place them under their pillow. And aside from that use of the Baku-specific treasure boat images, they were also important in the Hatsuyume, or first dream traditions on New Year's. Moreover, it happened to be popular to have depictions of the Baku on the pillowcase itself, so that tells you how prominent this sacred creature truly was to the Japanese of the past. One last thing I would like to mention is that the relevance of the Baku in modern Japan still plays a big role. They happen to be a popular folklore story told to children, and plenty of these traditions from the past have evolved and now are relevant in modernity. Now, one last thing I should mention is that there happens to be a real animal called the tapir, which shares the same kanji as the mythical creature. As you can see, the tapir resembles the Baku in some regards, mainly because of the long snout, but in modern depictions of the Baku, they happen to look similar to the tapir. For instance, Drowsy looks like one. To conclude from this description of the Baku throughout history, the Baku can be described in many ways. It's not necessarily considered evil, but it does have a dark side to it. But like most creatures of Japanese folklore, they're not necessarily evil nor good, but of its own nature. And I think this is important to know when analyzing Drowsy and Hypno. These two Pokemon are allegedly the descendants of Baku, and I'm sure we all see the similarities. Drowsy and Hypno, like their ancestor, feed on the nightmares and dreams of people, but to a greater degree, children. At surface value, this does seem quite peculiar, but now that we know their predecessor, we now know the origins of its temperament. However, we still need to analyze that vague incident which happened in the Pokedex, which states, "It carries a pendulum-like device. There was once an incident in which it took away a child it hypnotized." This odd instance alone seems pretty anecdotal due to the fact that it stated it happened once. So we can now come to the logical conclusion that this doesn't happen often. And the topic I wanted to know was whether or not Hypno is evil, and this instance is the one which sparked the controversy about Hypno in the first place. We know why Hypno and Drowsy target children from observing the Baku's folklore, so that isn't as weird as it once was, and I can safely say it wasn't for a malicious reason, even though there could be some consequences of the dream-eating process. Now, as I stated earlier, this vague incident apparently only happened once, so I think we can safely say that Hypno is no more dangerous than something like an Ursa ring. So, to answer the question, Hypno is not evil, but he's not good either. Like most creatures, it has certain instincts, and eating dreams and nightmares is important for it, as it was for the mythical Baku. So, what do you guys think about Hypno, or its influence, the Baku? I personally found its origins pretty intriguing, and researching it was quite enjoyable. Of course, there's a lot more to the Baku that I didn't mention in this video, mainly because I didn't want this video to be longer than it already is, but I do recommend looking more into its history. But other than that, I hope everyone enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to hit that like button or the dislike button, and please leave a comment. With that all being said, I'll catch you on the flip side.